testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances. This is an incredible day.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. That is Kamala Harris in her first unscripted comments as candidate for president. I'm Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio, joined by Ben Domenech this morning, editor-at-large for The Spectator, Fox News contributor. Ben, what do you think about the vice president's debut without a teleprompter or any other assist?
Well, this is why she needs the teleprompter and the script and everything else. I mean, this is what we've known about Kamala Harris really now for quite some time, which is that whenever she is asked to give a set of remarks that are not scripted, that are not designed in a lab for her to say, then she sounds completely incoherent. And this is the kind of thing that we've seen from her in multiple instances over the years, and it's one of the reasons why a year ago, and this is something that I think people have completely memory hold, Hugh, there were multiple articles, columns in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and elsewhere saying that the number one thing that Joe Biden needed to do to ensure his reelection was to replace her with one of these very talented young governors and that kind of thing. Instead, now, of course, those same publications are just going to be lauding her to the nth degree and pretending as if she is the best politician out there, and they're already doing it. And I see that, we are now going to be living through a series of situations where they are going to try to fact-check and pull the wool over the eyes of the American public in a way that I think is particularly aggressive.
Now, Ben, I want to play for you the opening of Donald Trump's appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists 2 days ago, because I don't think the audience quite knows the setting into which the former president's comments have been made a source of controversy. Here is that opening with Rachel Scott doing the introduction.
Good afternoon, NABJ, and welcome to a conversation with former President Donald Trump. This discussion continues a decades-long tradition during election years of inviting journalists to discuss the policies and their impact with the candidates who are running for president, and the impact of those policies, especially in black communities. Former Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton have attended the NABJ conventions either as presidents or as presidential candidates in past years. NABJ is currently in conversation with Vice President Kamala Harris's team to schedule a Q&A either in person or virtually in September. As journalists, we use opportunities like these both to inform our reporting, but also to help voters understand the choices that they face in a consequential and historic election year. NABJ has partnered with PolitiFact to fact-check this conversation in real time. You can access that feed on social media using the hashtag NABJFactCheck. Again, the hashtag is NABJFactCheck. We have a lot to get to, and we do not want to waste any time, so let's bring out the former President of the United States, the Republican nominee for president, former President Donald Trump. Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they asked are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
All right, Ben Domenech, what do you make of that welcome by Rachel Scott?
I don't know who Rachel Scott is. I'm sorry. I'm not sure I've ever read a Rachel Scott story. I don't know her journalistic record. But if this is a representation of who she is, I don't think she sounds like a journalist. She sounds like a Democratic activist. And look, this is something that we deal with actually within the world of media. And I want to be pretty blatant about something, Hugh. It is absolutely racist to not be able to call a black journalist biased or stupid or any of these other things, because everybody can be biased or stupid or any of these things. When it comes to confronting people, across racial lines within this space, Hugh, I think I'm half Puerto Rican. I have a Hispanic background. I'm not offended when people call me stupid or racist or anything like that, because I think that they're stupid and racist. I don't think that this is a situation that is in any way, justified by the situation at hand. To open a situation of conversation with the former president of the United States, the nominee of a major political party, someone who is basically a coin flip away from being the president once again, with this type of question, basically suggesting that an entire swath of the American public can't trust you because of their race, because you've criticized people who also share that race in the past, is aggressively. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And look, you could bring up questions about birtherism or something like that if you wanted to. I think that's kind of old news, and I think it's been addressed. But I also think that this is a completely irresponsible way to address a former candidate. And it's very clear that in this circumstance, at this moment when we have so much distrust in media, so much distrust in the media as an institution, that you should be taking the opposite tack when it comes to Donald Trump. And instead saying, the question that I would actually ask him is, why do you think you're doing so well among black voters, given all this? As opposed to asking a question that says, no black voter implies no black voter should ever trust you because you've been critical of people like April Ryan, who are terrible journalists who are not good at their job.
No, Ben, my first reaction was 3 weeks ago, he was shot in the ear and was a quarter inch away from being dead. And he's received the nomination of his party, and he attends the National Association of Black Journalists, which is expected to be hostile. Kamala Harris blows them off. They screw up the sound system. They're 35 minutes late. He walks out to this weird music, sits down, and she opens up with a half dozen.
I had not heard the music before. Yeah, that's very weird.
It was very weird. A half dozen accusations followed by an alleged question. It was a setup. It was just absolutely a setup.
Absolutely a setup. But here's the thing that just this is what makes me crazy about this. We see this happen time and again, Hugh, in these journalistic entities that basically present themselves as presenting both sides, but actually don't. Where they invite people to come on, they invite people to come into their space, and then they treat them so terribly that they won't come back. Okay, that Republicans won't come back on your show, that you won't have any conservative representation. There are whole swaths of the media, Hugh, where you don't have any kind of representation of the average conservative voter today. And that's something that is just unacceptable in this media environment. You have to recognize that, you need to include these voices. You can't just have, 8 people who hate Donald Trump and then the random former Republican who also hates Donald Trump for slightly different reasons, which is what you get on 90% of the networks today.
It is. They got Scott Jennings over at CNN. He's the last guy on a major network.
He's the last holdout.
Yep, he's the last man standing. Okay, Ben, let me ask you about the numbers. Donald Trump remains ahead in most swing states, tied in 2 others. My question is, Josh Shapiro should be their nominee. He's by far their best bet because they need Pennsylvania. Will he be their nominee for vice president?
I think he probably will be, but here's the thing, Hugh, and you know this, it's going to expose the fractures in their own base as it relates to Israel and other issues that are, very hot button, and where, frankly, Kamala Harris has already proven herself to be completely an abject failure. And I think that that's something that they have to factor into their decision. Is Josh Shapiro worth several points in Pennsylvania, a critical state for them? Absolutely. Is Kamala's weakest point the Rust Belt? Yes, it is, other than Michigan, and I think that she knows that. But at the same time, I think that this is going to be a situation where they're going to, if they name Josh Shapiro, they're going to have to confront a portion of their base that's not going to like that fact. John King got in a little bit of trouble because he basically said the soft part out loud on CNN a couple weeks ago. But I think that that's probably going to be the case. If not, I think you could see Mark Kelly, who's a combat veteran, an astronaut, all the other things that go into his favor. But I certainly think it's going to